Hey everyone, and welcome to Kensington Church. We're so glad that you're here with us today, whether you're streaming online or whether you're at one of our 6 campuses in the state. If we haven't met, my name is Andrew Kim, and I am the teaching and small groups pastor at our Troy campus. And I've been at Kensington for almost 4 years. And I'm married to my wife, Robin, and we have 3 awesome kids, Eliana, who's 9, Isaiah, who's 8, and our little bulldozer, Mia, who is 3. And my favorite summer pastime is actually taking road trips with my family, and we do it every single year. So whatever you have been up to this summer, we hope that you've had a fantastic time thus far. And we are in the 2nd week of our series, Living the Dream. But before we get into that, I want to invite you to 2 exciting upcoming events. And the first is baptisms, and they're going to be happening this Wednesday at our Troy campus out on the East Lawn. And this is a special event because all of our Metro Detroit campuses will be coming together for the first time in a very long time. And even though we've been fully opened and meeting in person now for several months, there are still friends from other campuses, you know what, I haven't seen in over a year. And so this outdoor gathering is going to be amazing. And because we're going to be witnessing and celebrating baptisms, connecting with old friends, singing together. And did I mention there's going to be food? And Traverse City isn't going to be making the trip down, but they're going to be holding their baptisms at the beach, which is a great thing to do in northern Michigan. And so if you have any questions or you want to find out more about what it means to be baptized as a follower of Jesus, we'd love for you to visit kensingtonchurch.org/baptism. But we'd love for you to come out this coming Wednesday on the Troy lawn to celebrate all together. But something else that I want to let you know about is happening in August, and it's called Rock Your Family. And this is an opportunity for families not only to connect with one another, but most importantly, to connect with God. And in the past, we've had it over an entire weekend, but this year, we're packing all the fun and excitement into one day. And it's going to be at Covenant Hills Camp in Otisville, Michigan on Saturday, August 21st. I can't think of a better way to end summer than this. Laughing, having fun, and making some incredible memories. And my family is going to be there, and you'll probably see us ziplining on the rock climbing wall, as well as on the blob. And so we'd love for you to join us. And so for more information and to register, visit kensingtonchurch.org/RYF. And so let's get back now to week 2 of our series, Living the Dream. And I hope this series inspires you to dream big dreams and that God reveals to you what it means to live fully.
Well, good morning, man. It is great to be together. I want to invite you guys to stand. We're going to take some time just to sing and to worship together. I love that we have the opportunity to be reminded of all of God, of what God has done for us. So let's sing together. Here we go. Come on.
Now I'm ready, whatever.
We're going to take some time to introduce a new song to you guys today. It's called Great Things. And I love this because we're just reminded in every season, in every era of our life, God does amazing things. And we can be reminded of that. So let's sing. Come on.
So good. Woo! Good morning, everybody. How you doing? Good. It's good to see you. That was awesome. I love having Hayden and Sydney and their 3 boys back with us for the weekend. And what's up, Sid? And we love you guys. Fun to be here. What a great day, man. I was a little bit worried because we have all this outdoor stuff planned for afterwards. And I was like, no, the rain, but it went away. So everything will be good. Hey, there are so many great things going on. We had taken a student ministry team to Cedar Point. It was awesome, man. We had so many students come. We had to get another bus, and It was unbelievable. It was fun. A lot of great things happening. We've got men's events coming up. We actually have a big old euchre tournament we're going to do at my father-in-law's house this Thursday. We'd love to have you come. I'm no good at euchre, neither am I. But we can have like burgers and hot dogs and hang out and talk and have a good time, and all men are welcome. I'd love you to come. We have an incredible ladies event. Going to be August 17th. We'd love to invite you to. We got baptisms coming up this Wednesday. And if you've been thinking about, honestly, you've never been baptized before, it'd be an incredible night to have you come out. I'll be there. We'll all be there, part of our team. We're going to host it at our Troy campus out on the lawn. Beautiful worship music, an amazing evening. Or even if you're thinking, man, I'd love to rededicate my life. I want to set it in a new trajectory, a new place in life. And you can do that too. And so I just want to encourage you to be a part of that. And before we get too much further, I'd love to take our offering. And almost all the time we do this online. Probably 90% of you do. And so I'd love just to encourage you. If you've never given or you've been part of this place, I just want to tell you, being there Thursday with all these students and all these amazing leaders, and I texted my wife, I said, it reminds me what a privilege it is to be here. I don't know if it felt like a privilege when we were flying down like on a roller coaster after a bunch of Coney dogs, but it was like amazing, man, to see these amazing kids and these wonderful leaders and what we get to be part of, and just so many cool things, man. My buddy Grant had texted me this morning that he's got 90 days sobriety today too. I mean, isn't that incredible? Like, it's been one beautiful thing after another. We did a baby dedication yesterday, and it's awesome what God is doing in this ministry. And so I just want to encourage you to give to it, because you're not giving to a program, you're giving to people's lives, and you're watching their lives be transformed. And so I just want to remind you of that. So, well, we are middle of the series. We had Leo last week, which don't you love when Leo comes out? Man, he's amazing, dude. The guy's like fire all the time. And we're doing this series called Living the Dream. And anytime you hear that, here's the reality. People are full of it. when they say that, you're like, how's life going? Living the dream. And they typically mean it the opposite way. The only person I know, actually, that really means it is my father-in-law. Because he always says living the dream. And he's actually got, I should have taken a picture of it. He's got, like at his lake house, it's got a little like plaque that says living the dream. And it's so funny. And it's because his kids are grown and raised. And he's got grandkids, but he can send them back home, you know. So, but living the dream moment is like, I look back from Maria and I sometimes, it's like, you know, there's a dirty diaper somewhere in the room. We can't find it. Living the dream, you know. Laundry keeps piling up, right? And never seems to quit. Living the dream. Or you stand in line forever, like at a carnival thing, and you get up there and they say cash only after your kid's been freaking out and crying the whole time. Living the dream. And Maria made a statement a couple months ago talking to me. She goes, you want to get a hotel room? And that would be awesome. I thought, yeah, me and you know. She's like, no, just me, so nobody touches me or talks to me for... I'm like, this ain't the dream I want to be living. Wait a minute, right? And moms can relate to that, but this concept of living the dream. And I get it. Life happens, and life will begin to string moments together like that. And hopefully we can laugh at those a little bit, and sometimes they're hard to laugh at. But what do we do when life seems to keep stringing these moments together, one after another, right? And all of a sudden it seems to be the composite of our life and say, man, we're living the dream, and we don't mean it. And it's crazy. We got to ask ourselves the question, can we live that way? Like, do you really want to live that way, where the biggest statement of your life would say, I'm living the dream? Or do you really want to say, you know what, life's tough sometimes, it's difficult, but I really feel like I'm in the middle of God's dream for my life? I mean, I think if all of us are really honest, our heart, our life would pull us that way. Like, that would be what we would actually want to do, right? And there's this incredible scripture shared by Solomon, one of the wisest individuals to ever live. And he had everything you could possibly imagine. I mean, everything you could ever want or desire or need in this world and life, he had at his fingertips. Kingdoms and armies and military might and wealth and women, and just it went on and on. But he gets to the end of his life and he says it's all like really vanity, not really knowing God's dream or direction or destiny for your life. And he says this in Proverbs 13, he says, hope deferred. I just want you to stop and consider for a minute. What have you been deferring? Deferring means to put it off, but to deal with it at a later date. I'm going to set it aside and I'll address it sometime in the future is what deferred means. But hope, what is it you're really hoping for? Like if you could quiet your heart and you could slow things down for a little bit, what is it you really long for? He says, hope deferred, it makes the heart sick. Have you ever had heartache? Not like heartburn from Taco Bell, but like your heart sick, right? Your heart longs. There's sometimes no worse pain. You'd rather have a big cut in your leg or a broken bone or something, but heartache seems to be so internal. It seems to weigh on us so heavily. It seems to never leave us alone and goes with us everywhere we go. And Solomon's describing that kind of heartache. He says, but a dream, living the dream concept, but a dream fulfilled, it's like a tree of life. You know what's interesting about that tree of life? The psalmist describes that in Psalm 1, a tree of life that produces fruit, whether it's in a good season or a poor season. Whether things are going awesome or they're going terrible, you begin to produce fruit. And God's saying that I wired you this way. Solomon's saying what I'm discovering about God is that he's actually wired us this way, that he's given a dream for our life, for your life and for mine, for all of ours. And that within this dream, that when it becomes fulfilled, when we really begin to hear God's voice, when we really begin to step into God's purpose for our life, we begin to operate in a way when people see us and they say, they really are living the dream. Like their life is like that tree of life that Solomon was talking about. They always seem to have fruit. They always seem to have peace. They always seem to have joy, even when things aren't going good. It's not that they have a perfect life or nothing ever messes up or the car never breaks down or anything like that. It's not that they're absent of problems. It's that in the middle of their problems, they still seem to have some kind of hope. And I don't know about you, but I really want to work hard to move my life in that direction. And I'm really convinced that in this series, that God's inviting us in that way. And so I want to just kind of pick up real quick. We've been talking about this guy named Gideon, right? This guy named Gideon is a perfect example of somebody who almost felt overwhelmed. In fact, he did feel overwhelmed. He felt unfulfilled in his life. He felt to the point where he was insecure about his life. See, in the book of Judges, it describes this guy, Gideon, and the Israelites. They had moved away from the voice of God. They quit trusting God, quit depending on God. Things got good. Things were great. All of a sudden, they abandoned God. They're like, we don't really need you in our life. And things begin to go sideways, which most often happens for all of us when we begin to get away from the Creator's voice. And so Gideon's here, and he's in the spot. And the Midianites are this oppressive nation, and they're pushing Israel back, and they have really devastated everything that Israel had accumulated, had came to known to be a society. And so Midian has pushed us back, and Gideon is there, and he's upset. And like we talked about last week, Leo had just so eloquently put that God hears our cries. And so here Israel is crying out, and God sends a prophet, and the prophet says, look, he's like, you've turned from God, you've turned from his voice. The reason you're not living the dream, Israel, because they were promised a dream to live in this land of milk and honey, a place that there was going to be theirs, that they would call home, that they would raise their kids in and their grandkids in. Like this was going to be exciting and amazing, right? But everything begins to shift. And so God begins to pick up, and where Leo left off last week, we are going to pick back up because God actually does hear the cries of his people. And so here's what I know, and I'm just going to give you a few thoughts as we go on this journey together. Living the dream requires us to do a few things and understand a few things about God's voice. Here's the first one, that God's voice is bigger than our circumstances. God's voice is much larger and bigger than our circumstances. God's voice is so interesting. It's like this, like God comes back to Gideon, and he comes to him, but he's saying something. He's like a father. It's like, have you ever had like a dad tell you don't do something and you do it and you get hurt? I remember like growing up on a bike, and we had all my buddies over, and we were racing over this jump, and like to make it more interesting, we'd say, hey, let's try to, like, if we could, if you don't go past the jump quick enough, we'll jam a stick in the front tire and you'll flip over it. I know, at the moment it sounded like an amazing idea. So we do this. So I come barreling down hard as I can, and my friends, they missed it the first time. So I come barreling down a second time, and all three of them come around, and they have these huge sticks, and they go wham in the front tire, and like two of them caught at the same time. And sure enough, I went whipping over top of the bike, man. My foot got caught in the chain, so I flip over the bike, get all skinned up. Bike hits me in the back of the head, and my dad comes out and said, well, son, I told you not to do that. And I'm like, don't you hate those moments? You're like, yeah, I know. I'm bleeding. I'm hurt. I got it. Thank you. But then at the same time, he brought me in and he cleaned me up. And this is what God's about to do. God's saying, in my voice, don't you know that I'm trying to give you warning, I'm trying to give you direction, I'm trying to bring you clarity, but I'm also going to bring you compassion. I'm always going to speak something into your life that's bigger than your circumstances. Because when our circumstances begin to overwhelm us, we don't need somebody to say, I told you so. We kind of get that in that moment. Whether it's something we did to ourselves or something that's been put on us, what we need at that moment is a God-sized voice of hope. And here's what he comes in. It says, the angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. But you have to understand something again. Gideon is here, and you say, what is the significance about being in a wine press? If you're threshing wheat, you would have want to find yourself at the top of a hill. Why? Because that's where the wind would have been blowing. That's where the sun would have been the brightest. You would have been threshing this wheat. You would have been taking the chaff from the seed, and you would have been separating it from the grain, right? It would have done that, and then the chaff would have blown away, and maybe a light breeze that day, but the grain would have begun to fall down, and you would have been able to see at the brightness of the sun on top of that hill, and that's where you would have done your work. But he's in a wine press. He's like in this barrel, if you will, this giant barrel that's probably in a cave that would have kept cool out of the sunlight, where he would have pressed wine and done that. And he's there because he's afraid. And he's worried that the Midianites were going to see him. They would have stolen his food. They would have taken away from him. Have you ever found yourself in a place of life like a wine press? Like where you're holding back. Men do this often. When life is tough and things are going difficult, we begin to retreat. We become recluse. We pull back. We hide. We begin to cover. We're insecure. We're unfulfilled. This is where Gideon is in this moment. And it's so interesting that the author has described that exact moment, because Gideon begins to live a life that is hopeless. Because why? Because he felt hopeless. Do you know that happens to us too? In fact, Scripture says this too, that as a person thinks, they become. If you feel hopeless for long enough, you begin to live a life that's not living the dream, but you begin to live a life that is hopeless. It's so interesting that our beliefs, they begin to impact our emotions. We see this with people, right? People that are, some people like Lee was talking about that last week, they're kind of negative. Like you almost like when you're walking, you don't want to get caught in a conversation because you know it's going to be negative. Everything's going to be griping this and that. But sometimes when we believe that way about life, it affects our emotions and it affects our actions. And then it begins to become the exact part of our future that we're writing. And God's beginning to intersect in this moment right here with him. It says, when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you. And look what he calls him, mighty warrior. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Now you have to understand, this would be an insult at this moment. Several years have been just like devastating to this guy Gideon. Think about difficult moments in your life, whether it be for a couple months. Some of you have gone through difficult years in your life or seasons, or maybe you're in one right now, or maybe you're about to enter one. This has been a difficult, if we could call it, season for Gideon. And then God shows up in the middle of this whole thing, and he says, hey, he goes, I see that you're hiding. I see that you're afraid. I'm going to call you this concept. I'm going to give you this name called Mighty Warrior. And I'm really convinced of this, and this is a truth that I think we can all hold on to today. I don't think God called him a mighty warrior to make fun of him. I don't think he called him a mighty warrior to be flippant or condescending or anything at all like that. I think he called him a mighty warrior not because of what he was doing. What he was doing was in fear. He had guilt that he wasn't standing up for his nation. He had shame of where he had found himself in that moment, right? But God was calling him mighty warrior for not what he was doing, but what he was becoming. I'm so convinced that when God looks upon you and I, that he doesn't always worry about what we're doing, but where we're going, what we're becoming. Because God dreams big dreams for our life. When he looks at you and I, he says, I know you're caught in fear. I know you're stuck in the shame of something right now, and it's marking you, it's identifying you, or I know that you feel guilty, or if you feel stuck, or you feel unfulfilled, but I know you're living your life that way, that's what you're doing. But what about if you walk with me and you listen to my voice? Where will you be going? What could you become? And he begins to talk to him and speak life into him this way. And Gideon's name, here's what's interesting. A name in that time was a big deal. Gideon's name meant cutter. It actually meant like cutter. He was like, it would be like if I named my kid like Weed Whipper, and like his number one job was to go trim stuff all the time. Like, how would you love that? Hey, this is Caleb, this is our oldest, Noah our middle, and this is our 7-year-old, his name's Weed Whipper, you know. Like, what does he do? He whips weeds, you know, right? I mean, so Gideon's been living with this too. Like his name and the name in that culture had so much weight, and God knew that. And so there was a significance about, what you're called. And this happens all the time. Think about when you meet people the first time, they say, what's your name and what do you do? Your identity and your purpose. What's your name and what do you do? I want to know who you are and what do you do? What do you hear? What's your value? And you begin to say, this is my name. And so this was a significant moment. This time, my name, obviously being Jeremiah, my parents don't think they knew this at the time. I thought, does Jeremiah mean warrior? Does it mean fearless leader? Does it mean just stud? Nope, unfortunately not. What it means is a weeping prophet. And it's interesting. I'm one of the biggest guys I know that cries more often than anyone else. I compete with crying. Who cries more, my wife or I? And it's like, we're neck and neck sometimes, okay? And so God knows as he's speaking to Gideon, he says, I know that you have felt worthless. I know that you felt this way. and that you've identified Gideon. The reason you're there is because you've identified this way. Some of us in here, I'd say most of us in here, identify when we get really honest at the very deepest part of who we are with an insecurity that God is trying to speak into right now. And this insecurity might, you say, I do feel worthless. Maybe you grew up in a home and everybody always made you feel like you weren't smart enough, like you weren't good enough, like you weren't capable. Maybe you grew up in a group of friends or in your school or with your community and you felt like on the out. You felt excluded, you felt ostracized, you felt left out all the time. Or maybe you grew up and you feel ugly and you feel not worthy. And so now you invest so much of your energy and time in the right clothing, in the right car, the right home, the right status, and you're compensating and you're trying to backfill this insecurity. But no matter how much you backfill and you put back into it, it never seems to hit this. And this is where Gideon is in this moment. And God is beginning to speak something into him. And what's so interesting is even like in Psalm 139, he says that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. Fearful means awe. In the presence of the living God, you were created. Fearfully and wonderfully, it means with the articulate, surgical, dynamic hands of God, he created you. He took trillions of cells. Right now, as you're sitting there, you're made up of trillions of cells harmoniously working together to express who you are. And God wired that together, and he brought that together, right? But we feel so opposite, and God is speaking, saying, I know you felt just like a cutter, like a weed whipper, like a nobody, but you're a mighty warrior. And maybe your dad didn't tell you, maybe your mom didn't tell you, maybe you haven't felt like that, maybe your wife hasn't affirmed you, Gideon, and you don't feel like that from your siblings, and you don't feel like that at all. But he goes, I'm telling you, you're a mighty warrior. I want to speak that into you again. And this Gideon is stopping and he's thinking about this for a moment. And it's difficult. Have you ever had somebody speak something into your life? I had two coaches growing up. One was Coach Lowe and one was Coach Slayton. And Doug Lowe was our first coach from like middle school. And I remember having this moment in basketball where I didn't dribble much. I got rebounds and I did stuff like that. But I caught the ball at like half court. And I looked up at the clock and I thought, oh my gosh, we have like no time left. And I looked, my buddy was double teamed, Brian Morgan. So I took the ball and I just went, and it was like a movie moment. I'm like, whoosh, and the ball is just sailing, man. And coach gets up from his seat and everyone gets up from their seat, and I realize it's going, and it looks like it's going right to the hoop, and I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, you know, and it keeps kind of going above the hoop, and then it goes above the backboard, and it goes all the way through the two posts that hold the backboard, and my one buddy's like, it's good, like a field goal. And I'm like so embarrassed, and they're like, Roy, there's 2 minutes on the clock, not 2 seconds. And so the ball got turned over, and we end up losing the game. So, not a great moment when you're in middle school at all. And the next day we have practice, and the coach is so aggravated with all of us, man. He's so furious with us, and he looks down, he goes, and we're laughing, because in middle school when you're nervous, you laugh. I don't know why, but just it's a reaction. It's what happens. And he looks down, he goes, you guys, you're playing like losers. He goes, you know, and I couldn't quit laughing because I was in middle school and I was just nervous. He goes, Roy, he goes, you're the biggest loser of them all. That wasn't funny. That's how I felt. But that's what happened, right? He goes, I want to tell you. He goes, you're get up, run. And I felt like a pile of junk when he said that to me. I just felt horrible. I don't know why that stuck with me for years. It wasn't until we had another coach, this guy named Jim Slayton. Coach Slayton, he was there, and I was in varsity, and we were playing basketball, and he got a hold of me, he goes, you know what you are? And I'm like, it like triggered this moment, like, oh my gosh, don't say it again. Like, it's gonna crush my high school years, don't do it. And he looks at me and goes, you're like a Mack truck. He goes, see how big you are? He goes, see how big your head is and your body is? And I'm like, all right, is this supposed to be flattery? Like, are you building me up or tearing me apart, man? You know? He goes, you're built like a Mack truck. He goes, you bust in there and you push people out and you get the ball. And man, he was going all fired up, and the team got fired up, and I got excited. We all got excited, and I realized, I'm like, I am big. I do have a big head. I do have a big body. You know, I can get rebounds really well. And I started every game. I realized I'm a Mack truck. I'm a Mack truck. Like, I was like, even sometimes in the mirror, I'm like, you're a Mack truck. It was like, I know, a little weird, but it psyched myself up, and I reminded myself, I'm like, man, I'm going in there like a Mack truck, and I'm going to get the rebound, I'm going to pull it down, and that's who I am, and I'm going to help my team, and I'm going to support them, and it was awesome. Man, and Coach Slayton totally transitioned my thought process about who I was and what I could do, and God is doing that in this moment. He's saying, I know you felt like a big loser, Gideon. Man, life will make us feel like a loser. And we won't admit it, we wouldn't come out and just say that, but it makes us feel that way in the pit of our gut. And it hurts us so bad. Some of you are hurting so bad this morning. And I'm just so convinced the heart of God is like yearning and saying, you know what, I've got a name for you. I want to speak into your life, into your worst moment. I want to speak life into you, that you could live a dream that is worth living, that you could have a reason that you get up in the morning, and that even when life is not going perfect, there's vibrancy in you. There's hope in you. There's a desire in you. I want to change the way you think. I want to change the way that you see yourself. I want to change the way that you believe about the way that I see you. God is speaking this into him right now. But Gideon, like us too, it's difficult. He says this, "Pardon me, my Lord." Gideon replied, he's rebutting this. Can you imagine, first of all, if you're hanging out at a wine press or anywhere and an angel of the Lord shows up, whoa, you know what I mean? But Gideon's so distraught and by himself, and sometimes we can get caught in this position too. We're so beside ourselves, we miss what God is trying to do. Gideon replied, "But if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all of his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us to the hand of Midian." He's like, "God, where are you at? What is going on?" You know what's crazy too, in the middle of this, the ironic part is this, that Gideon is sitting there and he's in his worst moment ever. And he's saying, "God, where are you really?" Not even realizing the living God is right with him right now. I mean, I'm telling you, if God is for you, who can be against you? And Gideon's missing this truth, but God is so patient and long-suffering, and he is faithful, and he keeps pushing in with Gideon. He's like, "I know you're struggling, listen." And the ironic part for Gideon to reply that way is this, and the ironic part of our life, the narrative of our lives, then we say, where is God? What if God was right there with us right now, even in this second, even in this moment in this room right now with us, speaking to us, saying, "I know your dreams. I know that you have hopes. I know that you have dreams. I want to fulfill them." And Gideon doesn't realize that in his worst moment, God is going to do his best work. You see, sometimes at the bottom of the barrel, God reaches in and he says, "Everybody may have forgotten you. You may have forgotten who you are, but I have not." And he begins to reach in and he pulls Gideon out, and he's about to do this incredible work in his life. And he starts with this reality and says, "Listen, Gideon," he says, "you are a mighty warrior." And you have to understand something about your purpose, your God-given purpose. And everybody wants this. Mark Twain says that the two greatest days in your life, the day that you're born and the day you figure out why. And your God-given purpose is this. It starts with your God-given identity. When you know who you are, you know what you're supposed to do. When you know who you are, you begin to know what you're supposed to do in this world. And you can begin to walk with competence and confidence in a direction of clarity that was like unlike anything you'd ever experienced. And this is what's so amazing. This reality, God just doesn't give Gideon a new identity. He wants to give him a new purpose. See, God's voice doesn't just give us new identity. God's voice gives us new purpose, which is so amazing. Have you ever needed to listen to a voice? It's hard to listen to voices outside of who we are, don't you think? My wife and I were just talking yesterday because raising 4 kids sometimes is amazing, and sometimes it's flat out stressful. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's just a little difficult at times. I'd be totally lying to you if I told you otherwise. So it's like living the dream and living the dream. All on the same day. And her and I, when we first met, we drive all over the place. And go to places. And she'd think it was cute because I would always take the long way to get there. But what she really didn't realize is what was cute at once to her became really annoying later. Is that I just stink with directions. I am not good, man. And so when we're in the car, she'll go like this. She'll go, "Are you going this way?" And she'll knock on the window. She'll go, "Go, go, go, go." I'm like, I got it. You want to drive? No, I don't want to drive. I just want you to drive. Good, Jeremiah. I'm like, good hanging out with you too, and we're both in these tense moments, and I'm just like, but this is the thing. God's voice is trying to speak something to Gideon. And look he goes on. He says, "The Lord turned to him and said, 'Go in the strength you have.'" Think about this statement. He's like, "I don't have any strength. And save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replies again. Don't you love that you can be honest with God? This seems like a formal conversation, but if God's like, "I want to do something great in your life," and you're like, "Hey, God, guess what? My life sucks right now," right? But you can be honest that way. God's big enough and strong enough to handle this. He's in love with you enough to not get offended about this. And he says, "Pardon me." I mean, it sounds like Gideon is this formal guy, but Gideon's really like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "No way." Gideon replied, "How can I save Israel?" He goes, "My clan is the weakest in Manasseh," one of the tribes of Israel, right? "And I am the least in my family." The Lord answered, "But I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." Gideon is struggling in this moment Because see, now God is dangling this carrot of saying, not only are you a mighty warrior, you have felt like you're not, but you are. But I got news for you. There's something incredible also about your life that I'm going to use you, Gideon, that even though you see yourself as the weakest and you're no good and you've believed that, I've actually come to you. I didn't go to the strongest leader in Israel. I came to the weakest one I could find to do the greatest thing ever, which is free your nation that's been encapsulated by the Midianites for several years. Like, this is the dream of Israel, right? This is their moment. And Gideon goes, oh my gosh, it's on me. Like, I mean, this is on him. And like, when I think of these, like, leadership is said to be thrust upon you, this is an insane leadership moment that's being thrusted upon him. But it's bigger than that. It's more than leadership. It's a dream, an opportunity to serve his nation. And he's so worried about this. He just says, I don't think I can. I don't think I can do this. I don't think I'm the one. I mean, I remember for Maria and I, it was almost a year we had prayed about and battled with leaving the River Church we were a part of, which was an incredible community, incredible church, and we knew that we were supposed to go plant a church, and we finally got the gusto and the energy and the excitement to go be part of this new vision and this new dream, you know, and we were so excited about it, so we left our job, we did this fun trip to Chicago, we rode a double-decker bus, it was so amazing, we took pictures, all in excitement of joy of what was to come, right? And then a week later, I sat there down on the couch and I go, oh my gosh, I quit my job. I got no insurance. My wife is pregnant. What are we going to do? It's like a Dumb and Dumber. Our pets' heads are falling off. Like we're freaking out in this moment, you know? I love it. Sydney loves my jokes. I feel good. Can we pay you to be here every week? So, the rest of you, you'll catch on. So they're really good jokes. But I'm freaking out, and Maria comes around the corner and she goes, I know what's going on with you. And I go, you do? Because I'm stressed. She goes, yeah, you're having a thrisis. I'm like, a thrisis? It's a midlife crisis instead of your 40s and your 30s. And she said, you're having one early. So I'm like, oh, that's even better news. Keep Googling away. Let me know, what's happening in my life. And I'm so nervous here, but Gideon has got to be feeling this way. But here's what I want you to know. The insecurity, the unfulfillment, the nervousness that Gideon is feeling, God is trying to push against this. He's saying, don't you understand? Isn't it me that's sending you? Isn't it my voice, the voice of God, that when it speaks, things come into existence? Maybe, I don't know where you are on your faith journey today. And maybe some of you are there and you're like, I believe God speaks to us. And some of you might be here where you're like, I just don't know, Jeremiah. I don't know if I doubt. And wherever you are, what if all of us today, with one common ground, with one common heart, could just say, what if the God of the universe really does speak to us? And he really does love us, and that he's sending us in a new direction, and that he promises to be with us in this moment. And God is pleading with Gideon, and he's pleading with us today. He's asking us as a community, as parents, as husbands, as wives, as kids, as students, as grandparents, empty nesters, whatever. Wherever we are in life, whatever we're facing right now, God's saying, don't you know I'm with you? Right in the middle of this. And I know your insecurity has got you in the grip, because insecurity will always make us settle for what's wrong. Think about that in life. Insecurity causes us to pick the wrong job or not apply for the next one that we want. Do you know that after this pandemic that so many people, it's been the highest rate of people transitioning out of jobs? Why? Because there was a wake-up call and they're like, am I actually living the dream? Am I actually doing a role or a job that I want to be at? Am I in the community that I want to be at? Is my marriage where I want it to be? Am I parenting how I feel like God wired me to parent? Am I living a dream that God has for me? And we settle for less often because we're so insecure in our relationships with our futures, with our dreams. We can't do that. We have one life to live, right? Last time I checked. And so God is encouraging us. He's saying, don't you know I'm dreaming with you? Don't you know that I'll be with you wherever you go? I have the power to push back insecurity in your life. And I don't think we realize in this moment. Say, what is such a big deal here about God speaking? Because God is the designer of the universe. I'm trying to stretch you today. I want you to stretch and walk with me in this journey of faith. But Gideon is being reminded that the designer of the universe is speaking to him. The one described of Psalm 139 by David, the one that fearfully and wonderfully made Gideon, the one that fearfully and wonderfully made you, the one that fearfully and wonderfully made us. I mean, we know this. I just was at this baby dedication yesterday, and you can see it in the parents' eyes. a man named Rolly and his wife Autumn, and they had these beautiful children, Rourke, and they had Mia. She was so pretty, man, and Crew. This little guy was a year old, but he was such a large kid, and I loved it because our boys were always giants. And they all had inherited my big head too. And this little boy, I hope they're not watching online. I didn't mean to call your kid with a big head. So my kids have big heads. So anyhow, but you can see the way that parents love and they look at their children. And we're missing this moment for our life, and Gideon is starting to grasp it. God is saying, don't you understand that I look at you with an unfailing love? Gideon, I have never given up on you. I have never given up on you. I love you, and I want to speak life and purpose into you. And God's voice, it's for you. God's voice is for you. In that final part of the verse, it says, the Lord answered and says, I will be with you. I will be with you. The maker of heaven and earth, I will be with you. The one that tells the sun when to rise and set, I will be with you. The one that has no fear and no worry, I will be with you. The one that owns a cattle on 1,000 hills, I will be with you. It's this one. The Lord answered and said, I will be with you. It's amazing. Jesus makes this promise too in the New Covenant, in the New Testament, the disciples, that he was with them. And he says, lo, I will be with you always, even to the end of the day, even to the end of time. At the worst moment, and the best moment, to the very end of your life, to the final breath lays out on your existence. He says, I will be with you. I mean, Gideon, Gideon's getting it. He's like, oh my gosh. And Gideon goes on to do this unimaginable feat of freeing Israel. We're going to hear about it more next week, and it's unbelievable of what happens. And then we're going to talk about next week of how, when you finally find yourself in the dream that God has for you, how not to lose that dream or vision, right? And it's so wild and unbelievable, but there's moments that if we don't capture this dream, how it radically changes our life. Marie and I have had the privilege of being part of foster care for a while, and the people she works for at House of Providence, Jay and Maggie Dunn, they are like so on fire. So, I mean, if you sit down with them, you will be fostering kids. So you're probably like, I don't know if I want to have a dinner with them. You do. I'm telling you, you do, man. Whether it may be just a mentor or to pray for these kids, and unbelievable. And she was texting with me, and I said, can you tell me stats of what happens? Because their transitional rate of what happens with the kids that come through their program have radical life change. It's unbelievable. And I said, how does it happen? She said, well, you have to understand something. Children that begin to age out of the foster care system, only 2% of them will ever graduate from college. She said 80% of all inmates that are in death row all have been in foster care. She said 70% of all children that graduate out of foster care that don't end up finding a home, for the males, end up in prison. For the females, end up in sex trafficking. She said that the rates are almost opposite. For them, she said almost 90% of them are graduating with a degree. She said less than 2% are finding themselves in any kind of trouble. She said the radical life change. I said, what is it? She said, because they are convinced that they are worthless. They are convinced that they are no good. They are convinced that they feel like Gideon. And she's like, and they come here and they understand that they're loved and they're accepted. They are loved in spite of whatever's happened to them, and they are accepted. They are born on purpose with a purpose, and God begins to do this incredible work in their life and transform them in the way they begin to change to believe. They begin to believe that they are mighty warriors. They begin to believe that in this generation, their generation, they are going to make a difference and they are going to make an impact, and it radically transforms and changes their life, like forever. And the crazy thing, it's not exclusive to Gideon. It's not exclusive to House of Providence. This is something inclusive to all of us in this moment. That's what's unbelievable. And life change happens all the time. And we want to share a story with you of a young lady named Michaela who felt kind of like Gideon, kind of worthless. But watch what happens to her life. As God begins to speak into her life, things radically change. And there's going to be a cool program we're telling you about afterwards. And that when you watch this video, I'll tell you a bit more about it. But how you can live your life that's really living a life that God has for you. Living the dream. Watch this.
So, Michaela, thank you for being willing to share your story. First of all, let's talk about your kind of preteen, teenage years.
So I didn't grow up in the church. That wasn't an aspect of my life, but I did grow up playing soccer. So I played since second grade up until junior year of high school. And after any game, my dad would just, have that fatherly talk in the car and be like, oh, you should have done this. I wish you played more like so-and-so, and like give me all this criticism, to where it felt like I wasn't good enough for him and that I was just like disappointing him on the field all the time. And then on top of that, also, I have a younger brother, and I just like grew up with the impression that my mom loved him more than me. So I just felt like I was like worthless to her and like unlovable to her.
And as a 12, 14, 16-year-old going through that, that's a lot to carry.
Yeah.
In your time at Kensington, anything happened there during those times? Or did you think of anything? Like, what was God to you at that time?
So in high school, God wasn't anything to me. He was just, I just went for my friends, like solely for my friends because it was fun. But it wasn't until college when I took a literature class and we read parts of Genesis. So I heard Noah's Ark and Adam and Eve, like those stories for the first time, which is interesting because I was like 19, 20 years old, never heard of that. To where that sparked an interest, and I was like, maybe like people are onto something, but I don't know. So I like found myself back at Kensington to find answers to see if God was real.
So then, through Kensington, you see a friend who's part of the internship program.
Yep.
So explain that conversation and what happened.
One of my friends was like, oh, I'm doing the internship at Kensington, and like I didn't know anything about that. So I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. But I had one more year of college left, so I was like, oh, I can't do it this year. So I waited until I graduated college to do that, and yeah, did the internship in 2019.
So you're in the internship program, which is just a fantastic program.
Yes.
So many great success stories with that. They take you to this event called Live Training.
Yes, I got the memories of my dad and I in the car on the way home from soccer, and like I was reminded of like, oh yeah, I did like grow up with this lie that like I am unlovable and unworthy. And then also just like the memories of like my mom and I and how I didn't feel really loved by her either growing up. So then after we share our stories with everyone in our group, it gives everyone else an opportunity to speak like life into you and like positive words into you. And someone in my group spoke the word royalty over me. And I've never heard that like spoken over me before. So like that really stuck out. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And she told me that first of all, like I'm a daughter of the King, Jesus Christ, and that I don't have to work to earn anything. Everything's already given to me through his inheritance, and that like the crown is already mine.
So we had two Kensington ministries. We had the internship and then
Yes.
this Live Training.
Yep.
And then there's a third one. It's called our Move Out Network.
Yep.
And so God placed a dream within you. Tell us about that dream and how that came to realization.
So my goal or my mission that like I felt God placed on my heart at the time was to make sure that everyone I encounter knows that they are loved, knows that they are worthy, and knows that they are royalty and like daughters and sons of the King. So that was my like overall mission, and I just have a huge heart for kids. I want them to never experience the pains I felt growing up of like not feeling loved or worthy. So I actually started my own move out team, breakfast buddies at our school partners, Rogers Elementary. Rogers gives free breakfast to all the students every morning. So I took a team of 1829ers, a young adult ministry at Kensington, to go there Tuesdays and Thursday mornings for literally 30 minutes. And we would just sit there and talk to the kids while they ate and like provided them an outlet to have someone just like really listen to them and like just see them and love on them for a little bit in the morning.
So the internship is over.
Yes.
And then you have to grow up and enter
I
the
know.
real world, which you have done.
And now I am a toxicology lab tech, which is now I'm using my degree, which is fun. And now I don't have the margin of going to Rogers in the morning because I work every day and early in the morning, so I don't have that time anymore. But I'm still involved with Live Training, so I'm one of the guides now, which has been really fun and kind of like a full circle of my experience of someone speaking life into me, and now I get to like guide others and like speak life into them and praying that I had the same effect that someone had on me.
We were in the series called Living the Dream,
Yes.
looking at the life of Gideon. So I want to read a passage out of Judges
Okay.
on the life of Gideon, and then I want you to respond, how does that impact your life, or what do you think about your own life after hearing this story?
Okay.
The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" And this is Gideon. "Pardon me, my Lord, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." And the Lord answered, "I will be with you." How does that hit you?
I feel like I'm the weakest in the clan. Just like not having that biblical background of going to church or anything. Like when I first started my faith, I was like, oh, I don't know enough. So I felt like I was less than in that. And then just my childhood of growing up with my parents and me going into the internship and not really having the support of my parents. Again, I feel like I'm the less of the clan, and it's been really cool because God has been with me through this whole journey, and I've grown and I've become a lot stronger with him, and that's really powerful that God can do that alone.
So Michaela, thank you for being willing to share your story. First of all, let's talk about your kind of preteen, teenage years.
So I didn't grow up in the church. That wasn't an aspect of my life, but I did grow up playing soccer. So I played since second.
You had to hear it twice, right? So I think it's so amazing about Michaela, man, is that, did you hear that one part that keeps sticking with me in her story is this, that she had realized and began to hear God's voice that she was a daughter of the King. And though she had felt less than, like Gideon says, I'm the weakest, from the weakest clan and the weakest one in my clan, and she felt the same way, but God begins to speak into her life, and it radically changed the trajectory of her life. She jumps in an internship. She finishes a college degree. She becomes a toxicologist in a lab. She's still now serving in the church, and she's impacting people's lives. And she's so convinced, even as this young adult, I mean, it's amazing the power God's put inside of her. Don't you love, by the way, that we get to pour into the next generation? And so God pours inside of her and says, you are a daughter of the King. You are meant to make an impact in this world. You are valuable to me. You are valuable to others around you. And she begins to share that story because God is writing a story in your life and mine. And some of us just need to pause like Gideon did. And we can argue with God and say, pardon me, but don't you know what I'm going through? Pardon me, don't you see my circumstances, God? And pardon me. But God begins to say, pardon you, but if you know who I am, then that I will be with you. The God of the universe. I want to encourage you too, if you've never even been part of this thing called Live Training, we're running an event for it. It's going to be on a Monday. There'll be a slide they can put up there for you. You can see it. We'll put it on our Facebook group page and all throughout the media. And it's an opportunity for you to really pause for a moment like Gideon did and press into this and say, am I hearing God's voice in my life? Am I hearing his identity he is speaking over me of a mighty warrior, an overcomer? Right? Maybe you're a mom sitting here and you need to hear the voice of God say you're an incredible mother. Maybe you're a man sitting here and you need to hear God's voice say you are an incredible provider. You are a wonderful father. It begins to rewrite the narrative of the false beliefs that we have held on to. And it begins to radically change that. Because when we begin to hear God's voice in our life, we begin to see victory in our life. We begin to find victory that we thought we could never have. See, Gideon expressed and experienced this unbelievable victory. We're going to talk about it more next week, how it unfolded, but it's unbelievable. And from a wine press to being on the winning team, God transitioned his life in a way and transformed him from the inside out that he could never imagine. I mean, this is unbelievable. I keep picking on him because I'm loving following his story, and I want you to be following his story with me because as a community, and I've already got his permission to do this, to encourage him. Grant, are you in here, buddy? Are you right? You stand up? Grant, you can't miss him. He's like 6'4", big old dude. It's Grant. Grant is the one that sent me this morning his 90-day medallion that he's been sober for 90 days, man. This guy is unbelievable. And listen, it gets better, man. This Wednesday night, man, you're getting dunked in the tub, right? You're getting baptized this Wednesday night. Nicole's wife, family going to be there. Man, I want to invite you guys out to be part of that too. It's just unbelievable. I'm telling you, it's for you. Sign up, man, for baptism. Sign up to be rededicated. Sign up. Sign up. I just want to encourage you. God wants to do victorious, amazing things in your life, but he first wants you to lean in and hear his voice and say, you're a mighty warrior. I'm going to be with you. We're going to go tackle life's problems together, and I will be with you. God can do that. God can help us see victories in our life that we could never have seen on our own. He'll take us places and show us things that we could never even have imagined. He will dream dreams larger than you and I could even fathom. But it starts with this, hearing his voice that will lead us to a victory.
We're going to sing together. I want to invite you guys to stand as we sing Sea of Victory. Here we go.
Darkness falls, won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. Oh, my God will never fail. And I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, There's power in the mighty name of Jesus, and every war he wages, he will win. I'm not backing down from any giant, 'cause I know how this story ends. Yes, I know how this story ends. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you,
Let's believe this today.
You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good.
Yeah.
You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for
take time just to sing one more song with you guys called Graves into Gardens.
You came
What a beautiful day. I was sitting there looking at you guys. You had such a big smile, man. And we're singing. I don't know if it was just because God was moving or you could hear me singing in your ear. I hope not. Sorry. And we love you so much. Thank you so much for being on Journey with us in this community. If there's anything we can do to be a blessing to you at all, please let us know. We love you. We're so excited about today. When you head out, stay for a little bit. We got festivities, all sorts of great stuff going on. Ice cream truck, I think, or ice cream. So just go out and hang out for a little bit with us. We love you. God bless. Bye.